you're having a good break. This is a short introduction to next week's topic, penal farms. As you know, the penitentiary, as a response to criminal wrongdoing, spread throughout the United States in the early 19th century. And there were penitentiaries found from New Hampshire to California by the end of the 19th century. But penitentiaries never caught on as much in the South as they did in the northern states. The main reason for this was that there was a different tradition of taking care of social infringements in the South. It depended less on courts and judicial processes and more on private action. People were more likely to take up a gun and seek personal revenge for perceived wrongs than to go and get a sheriff and proceed through the court system. So there was never the same demand in the South, the same interest in the South as locking people up as a form of punishment for wrongdoing. That was as much the case before the Civil War as after the Civil War in the South. Now that might be surprising because you might expect to see Southern whites using incarceration as a means of dealing with the numbers of newly freed African Americans that they perceived as a threat to the social order. Newly freed blacks were demanding wages and rights in ways that threatened the social and economic order of the South. But in fact, what we see instead of a reliance on penal incarceration to deal with newly freed blacks is a reliance on a relatively new system that we haven't seen before in this course, and it's called the penal farm or the convict leasing system. It didn't start after the Civil War. It actually started in the early 19th century, and it wasn't restricted to the South. There were penal farms in the North as well. But the system really was perfected, so to speak, in the South. It wasn't limited to Georgia, although both of the readings you're doing for this week deal with Georgia. We have two readings for this week. The first is a testimony of somebody who was captured and held in a penal farm, and it's in his first word, in his own words. The second is a chapter from a book written by a historian, Douglas Blackmon. The name of the book is Slavery by Another Name, The Re-Enslavement of African Americans from Civil War to World War II. Both readings are difficult. Both include graphic representations of brutality and violence. Please be prepared as you read them. When we meet on Monday, we'll want to spend some time going over the historical context because it doesn't make sense, really. The convict leasing system won't make sense to you unless you have a good sense of the period of slavery and emancipation that has given rise to the convict leasing system. When you read about the convict leasing system, think about what other forms of responses to wrongdoing it reminds you of. I think it's very similar to the Hulk in a number of ways, in its insistence on in its reliance on forced labor, in the way it confines people at night, and in the way it has no regard at all for rehabilitation. It's all about getting as much labor as possible out of the people confined. But there are ways in which it differs from Hulk's, and I'd like you to think about that. Please look at the syllabus. Some of you had questions in your comments from the midterm about the syllabus. The syllabus is online on Compass, so please look for that. There are questions that frame the reading, and that might help you as you delve into it. On Monday, we'll talk about the historical context a bit more. We'll talk about the midterm very briefly, and we'll talk about the final paper. I hope you enjoy the last few weeks of break, last few days of break. I wish we had more weeks. Bye-bye.